Don't let physical intimacy blind you from other red flags. Comparison is the thief of joy. Alrighty, this one's good. Cool. Love that. Let me redo this. Hey guys, and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Kat, and right now we're in the middle of a mini series where I pose a question on Instagram and have you guys respond to them. So what this whole video is just a compilation of those responses. As I'm going through the advice that people have sent in, I might kind of pop in with some commentary, but I just want to say that this video is by no means any way to lecture people on how to date, because I am not an expert at all, and I'm still very much like trying to figure things out myself. But I just thought it would be really cool to share what other people say and kind of keep the conversation flow going. So with that being said, let's hop right in. Last week I posed the question, what is one relationship advice you would give to your younger self? And we got a bunch of responses, so many that we actually had to cut this video into 2 parts. So if you haven't watched part 1 yet, make sure to give that a go, because what I'm going to be talking about today is different from what we talked about last week. How this video is broken up, the responses kind of gave off a general theme, and so I categorized them by theme. Last week we talked about the evaluation process. The second theme was on communication, the importance of it, how to go about it, and then we finally ended off the video talking about some of the general things that people should just be mindful of. We're gonna carry that on in this video. The first thing that we want to go over is the importance of alignment with your values. The first advice is goals and values in your mid/late 20s can be 180 from early 20s. Communication is key. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with changing your goals for yourself. I mean, heck, just think back to when you were 16. Think about how different you were. I mean, I hope you were kind of different. From my own experience, the way that I approached life, the things that I thought were important to me has changed a lot. In terms of my values, I don't think they've deviated a lot, but they have definitely been much more fine-tuned. Think about yourself and how much you've changed over the years. It's not really a huge surprise if a couple of years down the road you might want something different in a partner. So next piece of advice, you can learn so much about yourself and what you want in a relationship through experience. I have to agree with that. It's so true. Oftentimes, we might have an idea of what we want and what we like, but it's really hard to pinpoint what you don't like until you're in the situation. This is just coming from my own experience, just navigating through school. Just using a very generic example, I didn't know what specialization I liked going into university, studying business. But as I took more courses, I was able to kind of deduce what I didn't like, which then helped fine-tune what I did like. I think very similarly in dating, sometimes you just need to go through with different experiences, dating different people to understand what you do want in the end. And I think maybe that's why when people are older and they're going to relationships, they're much more sure of what they want. Third piece of advice, there will never be anyone who's perfect for you. Accept the flaws of your significant other if they are acceptable. Sorry, I added that last part, if they're acceptable. Because if there are things that just really clash with your own underlying values, then those are things that you need to act on. But in terms of small little things, it's important for you to assess if it's something that you can accept. I think that also comes with experiencing and getting to know the other person more. It's so hard to know what pet peeves you don't really like until you're like, oh yeah, I really don't like that. So kind of honing in on the communication piece again, it's just articulating, what maybe bothers you, why it bothers you, and seeing if you can meet each other in the middle ground. And then the fourth piece of advice is make sure your values are aligned as couples and as individuals. Yeah. I think I didn't really understand what that meant until more recently. I think what this person is trying to say is how you go about living your life, the way you treat people, those values, they're so much deeper than finding a common interest in sports, for example. As individuals, can you guys get along? Do you guys see things similarly? But it's totally okay to have different interests, but if your underlying values are different, then you're kind of walking in different directions. Not just as individuals, but as a couple. Do you see yourself walking in the same direction as a family? How you want to raise kids, how your families get along, all those things. To this day, I'm still trying to figure that out. That is what someone said. And I think it's very true. It holds a lot of truth in it. The next theme that I want to go into is important signals, aka red flags to recognize. Advice number 1. Don't let physical intimacy blind you from other red flags. I think that's really interesting. Also, I put everything in notes without any names, so I don't even remember who sent them in to me. I would be curious to know if they come from a secular perspective or from a religious perspective. What I've learned is that physical intimacy is protected in Christianity to not confuse people between love and lust. And so, yeah, I'm not really sure where this person is coming from, but I do resonate with this. If you're engaging in physical intimacy, it can cloud your judgment on other red flags that you might be ignoring, but because you're feeling so lustful towards the other person, you are not seeing what's best for you. So I think that's where this person is coming from. So advice number 2, compatibility is key. I think a lot of people miss the mark here and end up trapped in unhealthy relationships. I think in my last video, I mentioned that sometimes, even if you get along with someone really well, you might not be fundamentally compatible. Number 3, gaslighting is a no-go. And if you're wondering what gaslighting is, let me just pull up the definition so I don't get this wrong. Gaslighting is loosely defined as making someone question their own reality. What someone who gaslights would say or do is make you feel like what you're thinking and what you're feeling is not right. Be aware of that. Be aware that you feel a certain way for a reason, and you should not let someone else dictate how you feel. That is what this person advises. The next advice is communicate boundaries early and run ASAP if they disrespect you in any way or pressure you into anything. Trust your intuition. Definitely a red flag if you feel like someone is pushing your boundaries, and if you've said, no, I don't want to do this, or no, I'm uncomfortable, and they're still, even if they're playfully trying to move your boundaries, that's disrespectful. And that's not to say that you cannot dictate your own boundaries over time and have them change, but you should never feel pressured to change your boundaries. Alright, so that sums it up for the theme of recognizing red flags. So the next theme we're going to go into is patience and timing. I completely resonate with this theme right now. It applies to everything, with school, with work, all that. Advice number 1, it is worth to wait and be patient for the right person. I think in our day and age, we live in such a fast-paced world, and we're so used to getting things instantaneously, like buying clothes online and getting the next day delivery. We are so accustomed to getting what we want with the snap of our fingers that we are carrying this into our dating life as well. I know from a different angle, people might say, oh, just go and date whoever, in some sense, yes, I think it's important to expand and to get to know other people, but it can be really exhausting to expend so much energy into dating and meeting new people and retelling your whole story. So I think what this person is trying to say is, preserve your energy for the right people that you really want to get to know. This is just to protect yourself. All right, so moving on, is take your time getting to know the other person. I think also kind of similar and ties into the previous one in that, yeah, be patient. Recognize that getting to know someone takes time, especially as you grow older. There's more to unravel from your past. Obviously, we want to skip to the happy relationship stuff, but it doesn't hurt to really get to know the other person, to assess them more thoroughly before diving deep into something serious. To kind of protect both you and the other person from investing too much. Number 3, don't settle and date for the sake of dating. Really take the time to reflect and understand what your values are and what you want out of a dating relationship. Obviously, this differs from person to person, but at least for me, despite learning from past relationships, I regret not focusing on what my values were and how it should translate into a relationship. That was really good. The next piece of advice is be more patient with yourself and your significant other. For sure. I don't know what to say, so moving on. If they don't add value to your life, it's not worth your time. I think there's two sides to it in that I wouldn't say the people that didn't stay in your life are necessarily a waste of your time. In fact, you can learn from all relationships that you've had in the past, whether they are still continuing on today or they ended. In a sense, yes, I agree that you should definitely not continue pursuing a relationship if you know they're not gonna help you become the person you want to be and support you in your journey. But that's not to say that the time that you spent with these people is a waste either, because hopefully you came out stronger. Next one. Take your time to get to truly know yourself and know your worth as an individual first. I only really started actually dating at 23, and I realized that because I didn't rush into things and focused on me for so many years, I'm able to set better boundaries, instinctively know what I can tolerate, and have a better idea of what I actually want. Love that. And I have nothing else to really add to that. It kind of resonates with what was just said before. Just valuing, appreciating singleness as a time for you to really get to know yourself. And when you know yourself, then you can kind of assess with more clarity. Okay, last but not least for this theme. First part is don't go seeking for a relationship, but prepare yourself to be ready when the opportunity presents itself. That means putting yourself in positions to meet people and succeed. So just to address the first part, I agree with it. I don't know if anyone else does, but when I was younger, whenever I said, oh, I'm so ready to date, I was actually the most not ready to date. I just think it's funny because whenever I said, yeah, I'm so ready to date, I was really not in the right headspace. But when you go seeking for a relationship, oh, I want to date someone, I want to date the next person I see, I think we kind of build up a little sense of desperation and cloud our own judgment with confirmation bias. So something to be mindful of for sure. I resonate with this. So that concludes it for this theme. Okay, sorry. I literally had to run out. I went and got dinner, so I'm filming this last portion of the video at a separate time than what you just saw earlier. I apologize for the different lighting and maybe the different position of the camera as well. You probably didn't even notice until I said it. But the last portion of this video, I wanted to go into this general bucket of advice that people gave, and I didn't really know how to categorize them. So I just put them all here together. So, number 1, try to maintain your individual identity aside from your relationship. My thing was that you should both work to have your separate identities even in a relationship, rather than revolving your identity, interests, and all other things all around your partner. I think that's a really good point here. When you revolve yourself and cater everything towards the other person and you lose your sense of identity, then you would feel really lost without them. This person is bang on. It is so important that when you are in your relationship, you are still your own self, and that without the other person, yeah, maybe life wouldn't be as great, but at least you would still be okay. Learn to thrive and do what you need to do. When you become codependent on the other person, it's really difficult if they do end up leaving your life. Next advice, fall in love with yourself first. Don't rush about finding a partner to complete you. I think it's essential that a person discover how they make themselves happy or feel whole emotionally, physically, and intellectually. Then, when you do meet someone, ask yourself, can this person bring me the same level or more of happiness that I bring myself? That was a very thorough advice, so I won't dive too deep into that. The next one, similar theme, learn to love yourself before trying to love someone else. Honestly, that is so true. You yourself, you live with yourself all your life. If you can't meet your own needs, then how can you kind of show up for another person? Really good point here. Here's a big one. Try not to compare yourself to other people that your significant other has dated in the past. Not just advice for past self, but also current. Yeah, I think a lot of jealousy stems from our own tendencies to compare ourselves, right? To compare ourselves to others and to really look at what we lack and then benchmark that against someone else. Obviously, it's easier said than done. We are always constantly comparing ourselves to others, whether that's in school, at work, you name it. It's honestly a really toxic mindset to carry with you into a relationship, because if you focus on what someone else does I think you kind of fail to look at your own strengths. In the end, you cannot really be someone else. It's exhausting to try and live up to the expectation of being someone else. By being who you are, you're being honest with yourself and honest with the other partner. And if the other partner does not respect you for who you are and is comparing you to their ex, there's something wrong there. This ties into like the whole identity piece, really taking the time to understand who you are and being secure in that. Obviously something I'm also trying to work on. So I'm not an expert here. Very similar. Comparison is the thief of joy. Remain true to your values and disciplined in your morals. Yeah, just to reinforce what was said before. Next, be confident and truthful to your feelings for others instead of embarrassed and shy. The best that you can ever do for yourself and for someone else is to be honest. Because as much as you want to please other people and try and create the best environment, when you are not explicitly telling people how you're feeling, you're not lying, but you're also not being honest. And I think in the long run, that can be really hurtful to both parties. If you're always suppressing yourself and then you're not articulating it, you're kind of not playing your part in this whole building trust aspect of a relationship. I don't know if that made sense. I'm gonna move on, but honestly, like just from my own experience, the best you can ever do is just to be truthful and honest. You feel like that would bring up conflicts. Conflicts can be beneficial in helping you see whether you are compatible with someone else. Here's another advice, and I think it's super, super, super important to listen to. My advice would be to miss your significant other realistically. Like when you're on vacation and you miss them, you tend to miss their smile, hugs, and kisses, but never their poor punctuality, forgetfulness, or when you miss the person, you yearn. And when you yearn for an imaginary person for a while, coming back to the real thing is a rude awakening, and you are likely critical of them. In turn, they also may have missed an unrealistic version of you, and thus it's a mashup of letdown and disappointment. This is really interesting. So this is referring to people that are currently in relationships or perhaps pursuing something. Just being realistic and not trying to live off of an idealistic version of them. This really hits home because it's so easy to kind of paint an image of what you want and to ignore those really important things that do bother you, and then in the end you kind of let yourself down. You build up all this anticipation only to have it knocked down. Moving on. I'm gonna end off with a banger here, and I don't even think I need to add on. It's like super long, okay? So brace yourself here. It's important to understand the idea that your joy cannot fully 100% come from your significant other, and vice versa. You can't provide all the joy to your significant other. It's healthy to have multiple sources of joy in life. It's unhealthy to be codependent. One mistake I've made in past relationships is relying too much on my significant other for joy, happiness, love, etc. To the point where I would disregard all other people in my life, including God, or even simple life-giving things like going on a walk by myself. And when that person couldn't deliver, I was left with nothing. It created too much pressure for that person to be the only source of joy in my life. I learned that it's healthy to maintain individuality, respecting your personal life, and also the other person's personal life, but agreeing to meet in a common space for relationship. I cannot say that any better, and I don't think there's anything left for me to add. Just to recap this whole video, first off, I just want to thank everyone who contributed their responses to make this video happen. First of all, like just you guys being super vulnerable with me, knowing that I can see that you sent the messages to me. I'm just so deeply grateful. That being said, that kind of wraps it up for this dating advice episode. Make sure to subscribe if you liked this content. So I'll be posing another question very, very soon, and it's also going to be revolving around life topics. I haven't really decided yet, but feel free to DM me any specific topics that you really want to learn or hear about or participate in. I'm really open to your feedback. Thank you so much for the participation, and it was really fun creating this community series. So with that being said, I'm going to close off the video. Thanks for watching. Bye!